been kind of a crazy time here with the virus and everything, and we're in Antigua still. And but you know, the island's opening back up, and we've been blessed not to have any real problems ourselves. So things have been pretty good. For this particular episode, the last time I did an episode like this about the ferry, what I called crushing us, people freaked out and said that we didn't actually get crushed and stuff like that. And this video is going to be kind of similar. I'll warn you right now, we don't get hit by a ferry or sunk or anything like that. But what it is that we have, this is the life. If you're out on the water, you think that you wouldn't come in close contact with big ships and shipping traffic, but that's not the case. It happens all the time. And so what we're going to do is use this as an example of, or at least as a teachable moment about what you do when you come across these things. I have unfortunately probably the most important piece of video of this is missing, and the reason why it's missing is because I was so freaked out that I was pressing the record button on the camera while it was still on and effectively turning it off. So I ended up with a ton of video of the cockpit and stuff with the camera laying down on its side, which was obviously useless. But you get the idea of how this ferry was coming at us, and we just didn't know what to do. So we're gonna watch that a little bit, and then at the end of this episode, I'll kind of come back around and talk about two instances here that we're seeing and how you handle those as a skipper. So let's take a look at what we've got. Yeah, so we're getting over 7 knots here. Finally getting some good wind on the beam, or at least forward of the beam, and that's good. It's got the little white caps going on out there, and we decided before we left to get the dinghy up on the davits, and I'm real glad we did. It's not an undoable. It's one thing to be towing the dinghy when there's no wind. It's another if it's like this. If we had it out, we'd have to go stop the boat, head up into the wind, get the sails in, everything else, and then spend some time getting the dinghy secured. So it's really best if you do that stuff first. Yeah, the boat's doing great. Andy wants to release a little bit of main. Let's see what happens. Nope, we're still below. There we go, 7.
Did I break it?
Yeah, we're doing 7.2. There we go. Now that we're getting going with these, getting the lines coiled up, just straighten things out, make sure that we don't trip over stuff. I'm telling you, you just can't ever get away from this. People tell me about how they're on, that they're crossing the Bay of Biscay and this and that, and go to sleep while they're on watch because, hey, how close, how much of a chance would it be of another ship coming and being very, very close to you? I'm telling you, it happens all the time. You're always sharing the same shipping channels. across there where the masts are, in that gap, is the ancient city and ruins of Knidos, where we anchored in there a couple of weeks ago. It's pretty neat, although it's very deep in the middle of the anchorage, and the holding is kind of suspect. So if the wind's really up, you always feel a little bit uncomfortable there. But it's still a nice place to be.
Who's driving anyway? God for Otto. Otto, thank you.
Off the wind on average, and just going wing and wing. Wish we could go a little bit more off the wind. It would really help if we could do like 5 points starboard, but we just can't get that right now and still make the point out there. At least we're making good boat speed. Try bearing off a little. I don't know what to do.
I don't know what he's doing.
He was going behind us, and now he doesn't seem to want to be. What do you want to do?
I think we turn up into the wind.
Well, that'll close the distance with him.
No, it'll stop us.
All right, let's fuck, I'm gonna let the main out.
Yeah.
Go the other way, go the other way. Quick, we're getting backwinded.
Oh.
What the fuck do you want? What the fuck do you want? And here he is. He basically went and made a 90-degree turn in order to try to screw with us. You know, and caused a near collision. I'm sure that when we rounded up and dropped our sails, he was totally surprised by that, and there was probably like an emergency drill on deck while everybody tried to figure out what to do to avoid the collision then. Because no matter what we did, he kept on turning into our beam. We slowed down, we bore off, we did all these other things. No, he just kept on coming straight at us. And now look at it, now look at his course. Here's where he was coming from the point of that island on our beam. And there he is now, all the way over there. So as I said in the beginning, we're missing pieces of video, obviously, but you get the idea. I mean, the ferry eventually passed us to stern, which you'll see at the very last moment. There must have been like a fire drill on the bridge when they suddenly realized they were getting ready to run somebody over. I initially thought that it was kind of nefarious in a way, that they just didn't care that we were under sail, and that they just were expecting us to somehow disappear and not be in their way anymore. But I've come to believe something else. I really think nowadays that they do this run on this ferry like every week, every other day, or every third day. It's maybe from Athens, and they have this all put in their chart plotter as a route, and they just set the ship moving along the waypoints that they've got there, and then they go get a cup of coffee or whatever, and the officer of the watch wasn't really paying attention. And I think that's what it was, and that's why the ferry just kept on appearing to change course and come directly at us no matter what we did. It wasn't it was just that's the route, and we happen to be in the middle of it. So it all comes down to what the RYA says in the Yachtmaster teachings, the coursework, is that you as a stand-on vessel, you just stand on. But that assumes that the other ship and the larger ship is actually paying attention, is going to change course, and there's a good possibility that just won't happen. These people they're bored, and they do this all the time, and they just don't look sometimes, and they just aren't paying attention. So you have to be very careful about this. And as the smaller boat, you want to make sure that you try to get out of the way if you can. When it came to the freighter, it looks like we're kind of on a parallel course to the freighter, but that's not really the case. We're coming at the freighter at about a 30-degree angle, and the CPA was something like, 300 feet, closest point of approach. And that's not good, and you just don't want to. And it had us going in front, like in front of the ship, and where the GPS antennas and everything on that ship are back by the superstructure, and you have no idea, like, if it's really 300 feet or less, and there's no way that we're just going to go 300 feet in front of a charging freighter if we don't have to. And in this case, clear weather and everything, I actually turned to port, and that's why we're to port of the freighter. Typically, if you're in a shipping channel or a separation zone or something like that, it would be like driving a car. You'd be on the right side. So you're showing him if it was at night, you'd be showing him your red port light, navigation light, and he'd be showing you his red light. And that kind of tells you don't turn left, don't come across my path. And that's typically how you're supposed to do it. In this case, I obviously didn't want to cross the path of the ship, so instead I just went to starboard of him, and so that's how we ended up in this situation, and why I didn't just continue on straight. You want to do that. You want to make those corrections when you can. Whenever we talk about the rules of the road and collision avoidance, invariably people are going to talk about how the bigger ships have the inability to maneuver, and they really fall back on that a lot. The two things that give larger ships preference over sailboats under sail are the two items are the inability of the boat to maneuver, like to change course quickly, and the other is restricted by draft. Restricted by draft is when they're in a channel or something that's shallow, and they have to stay in the middle of it or else run aground. In those cases, they just don't have the opportunity to change direction. I think personally that they have a bigger responsibility to change course to avoid sailboats, and that's the way the rules are set up, is they're supposed to do that. But the bottom line is that under the rules, nobody gets away scot-free if there's a collision. Both skippers are going to be held responsible to some degree. And if a large ship runs over a sailboat that's under sail, there's going to be hell to pay for that skipper. But that doesn't mean that you want to stake your life on that. You have to do everything in your power to avoid a collision, and that's one of the big part of the rules. And so, if you want to look at the rules and see them for yourself, it's called Call Regs 72. That's COLREGS 72. If you look that up, you can kind of read how it's all framed.